This FSU offense is elite, and they live and die on a single play. Counter is the lifeblood of FSU's offense. Every season, Mike Norvell tends to run the play around 35% of the time that they run the football, which is good for third in the country thus far this season. They tend to match that high rate with high production. Last year, they finished with the second most yards, the sixth highest yards per play, and the most touchdowns running counter in all of college football. This year promised to be even better, with increased depth along the offensive line and a bolstered tight end room, and while they've found some success running it, they've struggled finding consistency early, only generating successful plays on 43% of counter runs. So I wanted a deep dive into counter, what it looks like when it goes right, and more importantly, diagnosing what's gone wrong thus far. Let's first start with the basics. Despite its name, counter isn't really a play that directly counters any other. It shares a certain resemblance to inside zone if you look at it sideways, but most likely it got its name because running backs usually track a step or two in the opposite direction of the play before taking the handoff. Although in modern football, out of the shotgun, the tracking really doesn't play a big role. There are three major components to blocking a successful counter run: the frontside down blocks, backside pullers, and the hinging backside blocker. All three have to succeed for the play to be successful. But if you pull it off, you get two extra blockers at the point of attack. The hole starts to develop because of the frontside down blocks. The rules to a down block are pretty simple. You have to control the gap to your weak side. That means if there's a defender there, you have to block him away from the gap. If there isn't a defender there, you help out the guy next to you and work your way to pick up the backside linebacker. These down blocks create good leverage for the offensive line since they're already positioned to the side they need to block the defensive lineman from. Let's take a look at a successful down block in action. Here FSU is running counter to the bottom of the screen. That means this tackle, guard, and center all have a down block. Take a second to see if you can determine their assignments based on LSU's pre-snap alignment. The center has no man head up, so he has to reach all the way back to this defensive lineman since the backside guard will be pulling. The guard has a man lined up just inside of him, so he gets a pretty straightforward assignment. And the tackle has no one, so his job is to help the guard double team this tackle, often called a combo block, and then work his way towards this inside linebacker. Here you can see the center does an alright job reaching the backside defensive tackle with help from his tackle, a concept I'll get into a little bit later. And the guard does a good job with his man with the help of a strong jab from the tackle to hold leverage, who's well on his way to blocking this backside linebacker. Okay, here's a clip that's not as good. I'll let it play once and let you decide what went wrong with the down blocks. So here it looks like the center and guard do a good job engaging with their guys, but when the tackle releases upfield, he misses the block on this backside linebacker. If you were astute earlier, you would notice that these down blocks leave guys sitting exactly in the hole that the running back needs to track through. Well, just like the alignment of the front side gave them good leverage to down block, the backside linemen are well positioned to move across the line of scrimmage and block those guys out. Specifically, you'll see two combinations of pullers. The guard always pulls, but he can be either accompanied by the tackle, which is commonly referred to as GT counter for guard tackle, or the tight end, which is often called GY counter, with Y being standard nomenclature for a tight end. The guard is responsible for the first person that shows. Traditionally, teams would try to block him out to open a wider hole, but modern defenses have adapted by spilling this block. They teach their defenders to attack the inside shoulder of the puller to close up that gap. So offenses have adapted back by simply logging those defenders and carrying them inside. This widens the attacking point for the back a bit, but it doesn't change much for the tackle, who still continues pulling around to dig out the linebacker for a big gain. GY counter has its advantages. Tight ends are generally faster and are usually positioned as a wing. This alignment means they don't have to go backwards to go sideways, so GY counter can potentially hit a little bit faster. So let's look at a counter that wasn't as successful due to the pullers. This play is GY counter to the bottom of the screen. Let's take a look at what happens. To me, it seems like the tight end doesn't do a good job of finishing his block. which allows the linebacker to fold back inside and make a play. That's why it's usually a good thing when you can get bigger bodies at the point of attack with GT counter. However, this has its own drawbacks. Take a look at this next play and tell me what goes wrong. That's probably a little bit fast. I'll play it back one more time. GT counter leaves a massive gap to shoot on the backside. This leads me to the final part about blocking counter, the backside hinge block. The trade-off to having all of these players with advantageous leverage is that it leaves a backside defender with poor leverage, who has to do his best to keep an interior rusher from getting to the running back. That usually means he does what's called a hinge block, which is similar to a pass set. Really, his only job is just get in the way long enough for the play to go front side. Here, this tackle does a great job getting a strong jab inside while keeping his eyes backside for any shenanigans. One interesting twist FSU has incorporated heavily into counter this year is to have an extra blocker at the point of attack. That can be in the form of a frontside tight end who has down blocking responsibilities. Take a second to guess what his job will be on GT counter at the top of the screen. Alternatively, the extra blocker can be a second running back, who can lead block on the first person who shows outside of the box. Now that you're an expert on counter, I'll give you some practice. What goes wrong with this play? So here the second puller should be following the hips of the first. Since the guard gets inside leverage, the tight end should follow him up through the hole, not around it. How about this one? Since the tight end is on the line, he has to down block. And since no one's inside of him, he has to work his way up to the linebacker. He gets blown up here, which means the puller has to pick up his guy and there's one less lead blocker. Okay, let's end on a good one. This one isn't bad, it's just different. See if you can spot why. So this play is interesting. Both the end and the peeling linebackers spill their guy, which means both blockers log their guys, which bounces the run further outside. Okay, that's enough testing. I went ahead and collected all of the plays that FSU was unsuccessful running counter, and I found that the reasons were varied. There were some missed hinges, missed linebacker reach blocks, a few soft pulls, a few drop down blocks, but nothing consistent. To me, that's emblematic of early growing pains in a season, something you'd expect. And those are things I expect to get fixed as we continue to watch this special team suit up in garnet and gold. Thanks for watching. I'm going to do more opponent preview stuff as the season goes on, but I thought this would be a fun idea instead of covering a struggling Boston College squad. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and please like and subscribe to this channel and the Notes 247 channel for the latest FSU news and information. Thanks.